Welcome to Ultra Retrospective, a little series where I go back and revisit shows and movies from the Ultraman franchise to see if I think they still hold up or not. Airing in 1973 as a follow-up to Ultraman Ace, Ultraman Taro is one of the craziest shows Tsuburaya has ever released. For better or worse. Produced alongside Jumborg Ace and Fireman as part of the Tsuburaya Company's 10th anniversary, Taro is the 6th entry in the Ultra series, fitting considering the titular hero is the 6th Ultra Brother. Like the previous two shows, I watched this one with low-quality bootlegs that had terrible subtitles. For this video, I went back and watched it with the Blu-ray release Mill Creek did recently. Learning a lesson from Ace's tonal inconsistencies, Taro is a comparably more lighthearted series, being aimed more directly at children. There's a lot more deliberate comedy. The attack team looks more outlandish. The characterization of the human cast in general is a lot more cartoony. The monsters do crazier and stupider things, and often have roots in Japanese folktales. And it doesn't compromise on its tone halfway through either. It's surprisingly consistent. That doesn't stop it from having tonal whiplash, though, and it's often more jarring as a result, to a degree that almost feels psychotic. Here's the setup. Our protagonist is Kotaro Higashi. He's not only the adventurous type, but he can go toe-to-toe with a monster all by himself. The scene in the first episode where he stops a monster with a crane is really one of the crazier first impressions of a hero in the Ultra series. Despite assaulting an officer less than 12 hours prior, Kotaro is allowed to join the new attack team, ZAT, a garish yet highly effective new attack team responsible for defending against a new wave of monsters. In a transitionary move from Ace, a leftover Choju appears in the first episode, but is quickly disposed of by a new Kaiju. Proving there never was really a difference in strength between Choju or Kaiju in the first place. The Ultra Wiki claims these things are called super ability monsters, which are apparently stronger than Choju, but this is never said in the show. They're referred to as just Kaiju. I don't care if something is explained in a magazine that released 50 years ago. The show itself needs to say this. Anyways, Kotaro is seemingly killed during a monster attack, but with the intervention of the Ultra Brothers and the newly introduced Mother of Ultra, who is absurdly top-heavy in the stock footage, and has clearly visible nipples, I thought this was a kid's show, Kotaro is revived with the ability to transform into Ultraman Taro. Wacky shenanigans involving monsters of the week, aliens, and revived folklore monsters ensue. Everybody gangsta till the vending machine starts walking. Despite being a far more chaotic entry than its predecessors, Taro makes a surprising amount of effort to not only dish out the first wave of retcons, but also some new lore. Lore that would better define the shape of the franchise's universe. The concept from Ace of the Ultra Brothers being a gang of intergalactic superheroes is carried over here, and since Ace established a Father of Ultra, that means there's a Mother of Ultra now too, acting as the mother figure that Kotaro always wanted. There's also the introduction of Alien Empera in episode 25, a mostly unseen entity in the Land of Light's backstory. He would later appear as a primary villain in another show, but I want to save that for later because it's a really cool reveal. We even get to see what the Land of Light looks like for the first time. It's apparently a bunch of scrap metal built in someone's garage. It would take on a much grander appearance later in the series. Team-up episodes are carried over too, and we get to see the previous protagonists reprise their roles. The show even experiments with structure, having a lot more two-parters, some episodes having fight scenes occur earlier. It's different. More importantly, in the grander scheme of the Showa timeline, several past shows are, rather awkwardly, retconned into being part of the same timeline. See, the original Ultraman and Ultra 7 were disconnected shows. Ultraman took place sometime in the future, probably the 90s, as indicated by Jamila's gravestone, and Ultra 7 took place sometime in the future too. Neither took place in the same timeline at the time they were made. It wasn't until Return of Ultraman when this shared universe was hinted at. But the specifics as to how they were was still up in the air. That's when Taro came in with its 40th episode and assigned specific dates to certain events. And it's not that bad of a retcon. These shows could have conceivably have taken place in an alternate history, a futuristic version of the 60s. It's just the first sign that Ultraman timelines are rather loose and not meant to be taken completely seriously. There will always be some unavoidable discrepancy or gap in information. It's still unclear where the attack teams go between shows. They even do retcons of this show within the show itself. The first episode implies Ultraman Taro was born when they gave Kotaro his life back, but halfway through, in episode 24, they imply he's a separate entity from Kotaro, who had a childhood in the Land of Light, which would be the story with him going forward. But still, what matters are the individual shows and how they each hold up on their own merits. And Taro, I think, is a mixed bag. Now for the tone. When writing about Showa-era tokusatsu, I've found that it's too easy for people to get stuck in a loop of saying, this is like Power Rangers on shrooms. I personally find such readings, when presented as a fault against the show or movie, as needlessly reductive. They ignore the genuine craft that went into the models, the choreography, etc. I'm not gonna sit on a high horse and insist people just don't get it. I'm not that pretentious. But I prefer to not constantly put down the medium I claim to be a fan of. I like embracing the weird stuff for what it is. That said, to imply that Taro isn't quirky, and that we shouldn't acknowledge that it is, would actually be doing it a disservice. It's nuts, it's off-putting at times, and its stranger elements deserve to be at the forefront of the conversation, because a lot of it is by design. Minus the off-putting part, that is unintentional. This is the show's best asset, but also its biggest problem, which I'll get into later. If there's any thematic stuff in the show, aside from some folktale influences, there's a persistent theme of family. Several episodes are about mothers, or monsters of the week, who have a baby they're looking after. Hell, Mother of Ultra is a thing. Taro's theme song emphasizes his father, and then his mother, and then him. There's a lot to point to. It's nice that not every episode has to end with a monster violently exploding. There are plenty of those. And variety is always a good thing. But so many episodes are like, my dad/mom is acting weird, or a monster loses their baby and goes bananas, and you especially notice it in a 50-plus episode series. I know Ultraman gets a lot of flack for its repetition, but stuff like this doesn't help. I did say this show is more lighthearted than Ace, and it is, but that doesn't stop it from having on-screen character deaths. It's just presented in a more flippant way. Much of the real brutality is saved for the monsters and the fight scenes this time around, and it's jarring whenever it happens. In several cases, the happy-go-lucky Taro theme is playing as it happens. It's surreal. There's a lot more of the monsters interacting with the human characters, or vice versa in this series too, even if the scale is all kinds of messed up. Like, for this walrus monster to be properly attacking Kotaro here, it would have to be bending itself like a pretzel for it to connect like this. The space between them isn't properly conveyed. It adds to the weirdness. The special effect crew is very much experimenting with not only the special effects, but the camera work. Sometimes it works, and the models and camera work and even compositing look impressive. And sometimes it doesn't work. It's very much a mixed bag. Fitting with the show's many other creative decisions, ZAT, its attack team, has the strangest acronym of any Ultra series. Zariba of all territories. What's a Zariba, or Zariba? Well, according to Wikipedia, it's a fence made to defend settlements. So yeah, this attack team is the picket fence protecting humanity, and they're shockingly good at it too. Despite having some of the gaudiest outfits ever conceived, and clown cars passing off as defense vehicles, Zat is one of the most effective attack teams in the entire franchise. They've got at least one monster on their body count, and they're really helpful with assisting Taro during fight scenes. They straight up have a device that vocalizes plants and fungi. The actual team members, I'm kinda mixed on them. I've praised attack teams in the past for their moments of levity, but I feel like all the characters here only fall into variations of goofball. I like the direction they went with the attack team. Their small talk makes them feel more like real people than the stone husks seen up till now, but nobody really stands out. They all share one collective brain cell, and it's just frustrating to watch at times. I will give a shout out to Kitajima, though. He has a pretty decent episode really late into the show where an alien manipulates him by appearing as his childhood crush. It's hard not to feel bad for the guy in this situation, but I wish this pathos was present for the rest of the show. It would also be foolish to not mention the team sees a couple shakeups. A few cast members end up leaving the show entirely and ended up getting replaced. It makes it all the more impressive how they were able to stay consistently great at monster disposal. I don't know where else to say this, but a friend pointed out that their uniforms kind of look like Chris Chan's shirt at a glance. Their observation, not mine. For what it's worth, the show's protagonist, Kotaro Higashi, is a cool enough guy. Early on, they give him aspirations to be a famous boxer, but that aspect of the character is dropped from episode 10 onwards. Which, I don't know. They could have had more storylines with him balancing his career with being a team member in Zat and the whole Taro thing. He's not a particularly complex character, and he doesn't need to be, but he does experience a bit of growth over the course of the show that results in an interesting finale. I'll talk about that later. It's a shame his actor, Saburo Shinoda, disappeared from the franchise after this show's conclusion. He brought some likability to the role. According to an Ultrablog DX article, which is a fantastic fan-made source for Ultraman production history, I'll link it in the description and will always give it a shout-out if I incorporate more production histories into these scripts. Anyways, there were plans to bring Shinoda back in a second Ultraman Mebius movie, as he was absent for the show proper too. But plans fell through due to budget reasons. It's a damn shame. Rather confusingly, within the show itself, they retconned Taro and Kotaro into separate entities, rather than one and the same. It's the opposite situation from other Ultramen conceived around the same time. Hideki Go and Hokuto Seiji eventually became one and the same with the Ultramen they merged with. So, Taro, an Ultra with no host, doesn't vibe the same way, you feel? I like Taro, the Ultraman, well enough. He resembles Ultra 7 and his dad, specifically to emphasize the familial theme the show is going for. He's got one of my favorite beams in the series, which is a weird thing to find a favorite in. The audio effect of him screaming Storium Kosen is just ear candy. And he's got numerous other, more bizarre techniques. He can summon pliers, a giant mochi hammer, a bucket, and, in his most infamous technique, he violently explodes. He's visibly fine afterwards, it's just a goofy visual. The funny thing about Ultra Dynamite is that he used it a grand total of once in his entire show, but it's so absurd that it's become an iconic move of his. It's one of his most defining techniques now. It's hard to find a fighting game where it isn't one of his super moves, and other Ultras have their own variations of it when directly relating to him. A lot of characters in this show are also quite dumb. Too stupid to live, even. Stupid decisions are what gets the plot going half the time. More than one run at the monster of the week thinking that'll do something. There's an episode where this lady thinks they can use the monster of the week right after it melted her car to eat a bunch of junked cars to solve pollution? I don't know. Then there's the episode where Bemstar comes back, and he looks rancid by the way, and this guy runs in and friggin' leaps into Bemstar's mouth to plant dynamite. It's insane stuff. Way later in the series, there's this young woman who has a volleyball match with a monster. Good on her, honestly. Taro marks the first time since the original 1966 series that an Ultraman show doesn't have Toru Fuyuki as the composer, though parts of his score are used. In truth, this show's soundtrack can't be attributed to just one person. It features an eclectic mix of new, psychotic-sounding incidental music and licensed insert songs. The incidental music isn't great. Sure, it's got some bangers. The part in the Taro instrumental where it gets to the electric guitar is bangin'. And the usage of an organ during the same track is perplexing, but I mentally picture a happy little old lady going to town on a church organ, and it just becomes funny. Even so, much of the incidental music is aimless, in addition to just sounding harsh and unpleasant. I think incidental music is incredibly important in these kind of shows. You want to have a soundtrack that works for specific tones in a scenario. So hearing this scary, ghostly wailing music over a scene of a boy reuniting with his father is just... creepy. Which I don't think was the intent. There are a lot of moments like that. But still, that theme song becomes such an earworm with how much you hear it. On average, you can expect to hear Taro! Ultraman number 6! Ba-da-ba-da, 3 times per episode. You hear it in the title card, then the theme song that directly follows it, and later on in the fight scene. I hope I never have to hear it again after I'm done editing this. Taro! Ultraman number 6! Ba-da-ba-da. Episode/Kaiju rundown time. Where do I even begin with this rundown? There are so many strange moments and kaiju throughout the show, it's hard to pick just a handful that stand out. I can definitely point out some stinkers. Several episodes in this show feel like they mope around for the first half before descending into the kaiju chaos in the second. Generally speaking, I find the kaiju of Taro to be more appealing than the visual diarrhea of the Choju from Ace. The purposefully stupid designs a lot of these guys have are charming to me. Despite being one of the goofiest series, Taro features 2 of the strongest kaiju in the entire Showa era, Birdon and Tyrant. While Tyrant is more impressive for taking out 5 consecutive Ultramen in the span of a single episode, Birdon is still more inexplicable to me. It's the first kaiju ever to get a trilogy of episodes dedicated to it. Normally that kind of structure is saved for a show's finale, but here comes this fucking absurd, cotton candy colored bird that nobody seems to be able to beat and is terrorizing the country. It manages to overshadow the other monster of the week, Zaffi, and even Taro within the span of a single episode. It's absurd. This is the same episode where Zaffi's head infamously catches on fire, so Birdon nearly had a real-life victim too. The tone here is so dour. In any other show, this 3-parter would have been the finale. Sadly, I've never seen a kaiju suffer from this much villain decay either. Every subsequent appearance of Birdon has made it significantly weaker. By Ultraman X, it was a jobber monster in the 2nd episode. I salute you, Birdon. You were one of the best. As mentioned before, the Tyrant episode is the one that gave specific dates to the events of the Showa era and attempted to tie everything together. That said, that part of the episode is the B story. The choice of A story in this episode is, quite frankly, bizarre. It's all structured around Kotaro teaching this random kid he saw on the side of the road how to ride a bike. something which interests him maybe a little too much. Over the course of the episode's runtime, the kid keeps accruing bruises and nasty gashes, and Kotaro just keeps forcing him to get back on the bike. I get what they were going for. It's a message about perseverance. But oh my god, just give the kid a smaller bike already! This bike is clearly too big for him. Just give him something his own size. And Kotaro just has this strained, forced smile the entire time as this kid turns into more of a wreck. It's like he's tormenting the poor kid. And the worst part about this is that he's so caught up in what he's doing that he keeps missing his Ultra Brother's cries for help. When this kid's mom shows up at the end, her reaction should have been, "What the hell did you just do to my son? I'm calling the police." This is just a bad episode. There's the perplexing presence of Live King, a rotund duck? Flightless bird? Anyways, he scares me and I don't want to talk about him. Taro is another one of the very rare Ultra shows that has a Christmas special, one of the last I have to talk about. Like I said in the Max video, it features an alien named Alien Terrorist. The unfortunate implications don't stop there. It has what appears to be a turban and a curved sword. What did Taro mean by this? There's the aforementioned two-parter featuring the return of every previous Ultraman protagonist. It was great seeing them again during my initial run-through of this show, but the actual plot of this duology is kinda stupid. It's about the arrival of this massive goofball of an alien named Alien Temperer, who I do enjoy for the record. He's demonstrably incompetent, yet pretty destructive, and his ship navigation comes from a toy symbol monkey for reasons I'm unable to discern. This is the kind of fantastical bullshit I like in this show. The big issue with this two-parter is that it really could have just been one episode. The second one just feels redundant. In the first one, the Ultra Brothers try to get Taro to prove his worth by defeating Alien Temperer by himself, which, you know, seems a bit unfair. He's been proving himself for the past 32 episodes. Less than a couple episodes ago, he fought 3 monsters at once. And the whole plan almost fails anyways because they think Temperer killed Taro and they had to intervene anyway. So yeah, good job, idiots. They also spend half the episode possessing the team members of Zat. What was the meta reason for this? Was Tsuburaya just not able to pay them for a couple days of shooting or something? Also, making the other characters think the people whose bodies you stole died? Yeah, is there compensation for the emotional distress to them? I hate how the Ultra Brothers are written here. It's wildly out of character for them to be so inconsiderate. With the exception of Ultra 7, the dude straight up copied some guy's appearance and has been committing identity theft for decades now. All in all, it does lead to this raw moment where Taro flies inside Temperer and grows inside him, killing him instantly. If Taro can do this, Ant-Man has no excuse. The second episode is more of the same thing. The Temperer that was killed in the first episode was fake, apparently. Except now the roles are reversed, with the Ultra Brothers now espousing the virtues of teamwork and Kotaro insisting on working alone. He's acting like a dick for no reason now, so they can justify this lesson too. It's out of character and, frankly, stupid. He didn't need to learn that working with others was important. He's been doing that in every episode until now. I know this show was made for children, but there was no reason to have these grown adults act like them. The Ultra Brothers go through the trouble of possessing the team members of Zat again, further proving how much of a rehash this episode is. If we didn't get that second episode, then we wouldn't have gotten this scene. So maybe it was worth it. Temperer really saves this two-parter. There are much better crossovers than this. There's the episode featuring the Mochi Barrel monster from the moon, Mochiron. This one is notable, if only for marking the return of Minami Yuko, the original second host of Ultraman Ace. There's this surreal scene at the end where Father of Ultra shows up and oversees her and Taro making mochi. Yuko looks like she's having fun here. Before I move on, I just can't not mention this. There's this weird moment where this guy has a flashback to World War II when he sees Mochiron eating mochi. Yeah, just a little reminder, I guess? What a bizarre, ill-conceived parallel. I mean, they're drawing it with a goofy-ass monster based on a Japanese tradition of making mochi. I'm not one to comment, but the allegory feels very misplaced. There's the episode where an alien named Dorobon, get it cause Dorobo is the word for thief in Japanese, steals Ultraman Jack's color timer, which causes him to deflate. That's it. That's the episode. I've been meaning to show the proper context for this clip for a while now. Also, Jack has these snazzy red boots in this appearance, and this appearance only. They should bring this look back. Monster Doll Festival, one of the final episodes, is where I think the madness of this show peaks. Not only is the monster of the week a raging alcoholic, but we're subjected to this androgynous kid's musical numbers. Things come to a head when these panda-looking alien kids assist in calming the monster down. This song they're singing, an insert song titled Love Dial 6700, actually gets a little more mileage in Ultraman Leo. The first time was during a scene where an old man gets sliced in half. And the second was when Alien Magma stole some kid's pinwheel. Yeah, the middle portion of Leo can be just as weird as Taro at times. Taro's got a pretty entertaining string of episodes dedicated to the return of several past kaiju. Mephilus, Eleking, Bemstar, Sabotender, and Verocron. And they all look pretty bad. There was no way they were going to be able to use their original suits, but their replacement suits here are all lumpy and low quality. Bemstar especially looks like roadkill. Seriously, look at them side by side. The drop in quality is crazy. Though this may be intentional because he was brought back from the dead by Yapul of all characters. Yeah, he's brought back for a two-parter where he resurrects Bemstar and two of his Choju. Dude went from being an overarching villain of an entire show to just another alien invader. Again, this is the aforementioned episode where a guy leaps into Bemstar's mouth to blow him up. And he does some serious damage too. I have to admire the tenacity. The Mephilus in Taro is much less cunning and endearing than his first incarnation. It's likely a different member of the same species. His plan is to use a vending machine, which has a monster in it, to eat people. The highlight of this episode has to be the part where Taro punches him through the stomach and he screams in agony. The Eleking episode is also pretty fun, if only for the Eleking scenes. And he's just so darn happy about destroying stuff. Like, man, that's just cute. There's also this subplot about three annoying kids pretending to be various characters in fiction and folklore. It's pretty whatever. But the monster stuff is good. Taro didn't need to kill him like that. I just feel bad. The show's finale is contentious for a number of reasons. Taro doesn't fight some big monster at the end to cap off the series. But instead, Kotaro deals with telling the Shiratori household, who I've failed to mention despite them being prevalent characters in the show, that he failed to save their father. In a move I still don't quite know how to feel about, Kotaro abandons his ability to transform into Taro to prove to Kenichi that he doesn't have to feel powerless, and he proves humanity can handle things without Taro by taking out Alien Valky without transforming. I think this is an insane but nice gesture, but I don't think Kotaro was having an identity crisis about being Taro. His decision to throw away his ability to turn into Taro felt like it was on a whim, rather than one that was being built towards as a natural conclusion for his character. what if Ultraman Taro is needed again? Considering how the next show opens, Kotaro's decision here may have indirectly led to the deaths of thousands. He doesn't even stay with the Shiratori family, or Zat, he leaves right after. But still, it is kind of in character for Kotaro to just kinda do things arbitrarily. I get what they were going for when considering this show as a standalone thing. They weren't considering the next show. It is a nice little bookend to have a show that opens with him traveling to Japan and ends with him leaving. I guess it's also an explanation as to why Taro isn't in Ultraman Leo, but shouldn't they be separate entities so Taro can appear anyways? Whatever. So yeah, Taro is certainly a wild ride. I don't care for much of the cast, the special effects have their moments but are a mixed bag, and the show's tone ranges from something I can get along with to something I can't stand. Some episodes are definitely more laborious to get through than others. I had to redo the script for the video at least a dozen times because my feelings on this show were constantly changing. I definitely liked it more than Ace. I can at least respect that this show remained true to itself. Taro does not present a completely different show at the start and backpedal on it. When I first saw it, I was head over heels for how crazy it was. Revisiting it, though, I can see why this show would turn off so many viewers. Because the moment-to-moment storytelling and actual character writing aren't very interesting. But a lot of the appeal to me is predicated on the next crazy thing happening. And if that's all a show is, then I can't fully recommend the whole package. It caters too much to the child demographic with its simple characters and stories and doesn't leave much else behind to analyze. Which I realize sounds hypocritical considering how long this video is. Oops. It's a carefree, unrelentingly silly show. But it's one I would only recommend watching once. Don't do what I did and watch it again for a video. There are definitely more emotionally and dramatically fulfilling shows in this franchise that I would recommend over this one. I like silly shit, but Taro can be too much sometimes. A handful of kaiju and aliens from this show would reappear later on, but whatever didn't show up in Mebius is basically doomed to never appear again. Even in Ultraman Taiga, the recent show about Taro's son, it pays more tribute to Ultra 7 and Return of Ultraman than it does Taro. Taro, the Ultra, would reappear many times throughout the years in a supporting role, sans his host, including Ultraman Story, a theatrical clip show with some new footage that positioned Taro as its protagonist, offering an origin story / kinda sorta retelling of the show. Its place in the canon of the Showa timeline is dubious, and that's saying something in a franchise where everything is canon. He was later Mebius's mentor, appearing a couple times throughout that show, and later on became a supporting character in Ultraman Ginga, after being turned into a toy. Don't ask, it's weird. More recently, his son, Ultraman Taiga, appeared in his own show. Again, it doesn't really pay much tribute to Taro aside from the fact that it has his son in it. I mean, come on guys, did you really have to give the incredibly iconic Orphe the cold shoulder like that? Show the guy some respect. Where's Orphe's New Generation episode? Hey, bada bing bada boom, it's me. That's right, I was Zeton the entire time. But yeah, it was a bit of a struggle going through Taro again, but I'm glad that I could solidify my opinions on it in video form. But yeah, let's read my top patrons who helped make this video possible. Krazak53, Koman, Queer Kaiju, Radiant GV, Chronicler Waba, Alcoholic Alligators, Ryan Santa Cruz, Avok Robot, The Antagonist, Richard Ciavardon, Ziggy Zigra, It's Godzi, Big Odilo, An Actual Demetrodon, CMG, Red Comet Harry, and Marpzilla. Alright, that's it for now. Bye!